So, public business from the floor, agendized items.
No speaker cards.
Thank you. We're moving then to the consent calendar. Approval of the minutes of May 9th, 2012. Has everybody had a chance to review those? We have a motion and a second. Any comments? Okay, let's vote. Okay, passes. Thank you very much. Let's move on to Commission staff presentations, updates, and reports. Monthly crime statistics. Jim Colbert.
Thank you, Vice Chair Fuller. This particular measurement period goes from the 5-week period of May 6th through June 9th, 2012. These are the numbers up here. You can see a little bit of a trend in tick-up of violent crime. Property crimes are staying fairly, they're pretty random. Our arrests are, actually our arrests that are geocoded to City of Lancaster, these are total arrests for the station, but the arrests geocoded for the City of Lancaster are actually significantly over the last 2 months. So what do these numbers mean? In the May 2012 report, we reported a weekly average of 72.5 Part 1 crimes per week and a weekly median of 70.5. This month we report a weekly average of 83.4 and a weekly median of 84. The discussion usually shifts at this point to who's causing this, so I thought I'd give you more of an oversight, an updated oversight of the people that we're arresting right now. And this was my report to you last month from May 1 to April 25th, at which point, as I advised, we looked at 3 categories, and kind of actually 4 if you think about the first-time offenders. The variable with the highest frequency at that point were arrestees with a criminal history, not on probation and not on parole. They accounted for 38% of our arrests. Probationers accounted or correlated reliably for 22%, and parolees correlated reliably for about 9%. Now, bear in mind, this is for total arrests, and these are geocoded to the City of Lancaster. These do not include the arrests they make out in Quartz Hill and the arrests they make out in Lake LA and those kinds of things. So as we take a look at the total arrest correlations for May 1st, 2011 through May 31st, 2012, now we're starting to get a pretty good group of data. We're actually looking at 13 months here. And while there may still be a few outliers in the May data, it's good enough for us to draw some conclusions on. Now, I structured this the same way so that I'm going to flip back to the slide that I had up there, and I want you to take a look at the one number on here that jumps versus the other numbers. Take a look at the arrestees with a criminal history. It's at 38% there. It's at 39% there. The probationers and the parolees have remained constant. And again, when we do a scatter plot and a Pearson R to determine if what we're seeing in the data is reliable, it comes out to be statistically reliable. That the probationers correlate to 22% and the parolees account for 9%. Then we moved to Part 1 arrest correlations, and again, this was the slide that I showed you last month, which puts the folks arrested at 43% of total arrests that are arrestees with a prior criminal record, not on probation, not on parole. Probationers are at about 20%, and the parolees drop down to about 8%. Now, one of the things that we want to keep in mind is we had a big push the last couple of months. on parolees and probationers in making arrests of those folks that fall into those categories, and those are reflected in our 2 months of arrest data within the city. The last 2 months have been fall within the highest few months that we've had in the last 13 months or in the time that these data were collected. As we take a look now at the data that includes up through May 31st, again, I want you to take a look at the number that jumps here. And that's the arrestees with the criminal history, not on probation and not on parole. Probationers remain constant at 20% and parolees at 8%.
Excuse me, Jim. Where does the post-release people go into? Are they in the probation or are they in the top one?
Well, that's what we were trying to figure out over the course of this. In fact, Lee and I had this conversation yesterday. What we're trying to figure out is, now bear in mind, we're dealing with 13 months worth of data here. We think that the people are still being tracked as non-revocable parolees for a period of 12 months, but we don't have any independent knowledge of that. But this is what what we're looking at here are the folks of what their status is at the time of arrest, and we have not done cross checks yet to see which one of these folks. Now, we do have that information, but because of time constraints with other things, we just, given the low numbers that parolees are thrown up in this data, or in these data, frankly, it's one of those things that, okay, we might identify that it's 1 or 2 or 3%. Is that worth the time to spend on?
As far as these three, though, where are they fitting in? Are they fitting in the top one, or are they fitting in with probation?
Well, they would probably fit in with the probation. The parolees.
Yeah, they fall under either parole or probation, depending on how it was tracked. But see, again, they get a new charge, right, on the booking. If it's not a 3056 violation, we have to come up with a way to manage that, and we can have that discussion on how we flag that. If we put a special designation or a notation on the booking slips, we've done that with other issues in the past. So if there's a way to designate, if it was a person on non-revocable parole, if it was someone on post-release supervision, if it, in that AB 109 categories, okay, or they were directly on parole. So that's something we can talk about, how we want to manage that on the day.
Well, we can already make that correlation if we need to. We've been collecting the data from parolees for the last 13 months. We know historically who was a non-revocable parolee and who was not. I mean, we already have those data. It's already downloaded. We're good to go with it if we need to make the correlation. It's just that as I look at this, I have bigger concerns about this. But one of the things that we're doing is we're not just sitting by and saying, wow, look at this. The next step that we're doing, the mayor gave us some direction to look at some programs that have been successful by the military in Afghanistan. And if they had kind of a similar problem over there that we had, or that we have in Lancaster, and that is, they knew the layout of the land really well. They had a good grasp of the way things were on the ground. They didn't have a good grasp of the way things were between people, and those relationships were extremely important. And so the next step that we're going to be looking at is taking existing data and doing some things that the military found useful over there, and trying to run the same kind of associations. For example, in Afghanistan, one of the problems that Special Forces had was they had two tribes that were fighting with each other. These two tribes, they would go in and they would try to settle them down. And they would settle down for a little while, and then we'd start to arm them, and then, so that they could provide for a common defense. And then they'd start shooting at each other again. And then we'd have to go in and try to settle them down again. Well, they ran a social network analysis of the people that were involved based upon data collection by Special Forces troops. And what they found out was there were 4 key people that were running back and forth between those 2 tribes. When they removed those 4 key people from the scene that were identified in the social network analysis, one of the interesting things that happened was the 2 tribes settled down and things began to function normally, and they could arm them and they could provide for a common defense. Crime works much the same way. And one of the theories that we're working with right now is perhaps some of these folks are acting as persons of importance with that other group that we haven't really mentioned here, and that's the first-time offenders. We don't know how the social networks lay out there with any kind of statistical reliability at this point, and so one of the things that we want to do is look at the data, use existing data, and see what the network alliances are, run that, and once we get the process down, then we can begin to look at people who might be important to the types of crimes that we're seeing right now. This allows us to be a little bit more surgical in our response, as opposed to being just going in and throwing everybody in jail. And clearly, if you look at the data for the last couple of months, we have really intensified that. But as you take a look at the numbers on the screen from Part 1 crimes, those are still going up. Even though, and of course, it goes back to the old adage that has existed in criminal justice for decades, and that is you can't arrest your way out of a crime problem. I mean, there are other variables that are involved, and to me, one of the more significant variables is population. I mean, I sit and take a look at the numbers that came out of the Department of Finance for 2011. They had us at 157,629. For 2012, they increased this by a whole 197 people to 157,826. I got to tell you, I think we're way above 197 people in our estimates. But if these are the estimates that we use for these crime numbers up here, we're going to show an increase in crime. When in fact, if you account for an expanding population, it may even itself out. And so one of the things that I've been pushing for the last year is we have to take a look at the numbers that they give us up in Sacramento when they estimate our population, because that's critical to our crime rate. The most active reporting districts for Part 1 crimes during this reporting period, 1126 with 57, 1135 with 52, 1127 with 48, 1137 with 41, and 1121 with 35. I can't show you those areas right now because we're having some network difficulties with one of our servers, so I can't access the data and reach out to touch it. These are the most active residence burglary reporting districts, 1126 and 33 with 11. 1135 with 10, 1127 and 37 with 8, and 1121 and 32 with 5. Larcenies involving vehicles. During this measurement period, 1137 had 8, 1127 had 5, and 1126 and 35 had 4. Now, one of the things that I'm really finding interesting when we look at these data are the things that I'm about to show you right now, because when you put it in the context of 52 weeks, some interesting things are going on, and the trends are showing some things. It's just like when I was coming in here in the last year, one of the questions that some of the folks had was why do we show we're trending up when the crime frequency isn't there yet? And that's because of what was going on inside the numbers. Now, what you're going to see here is equally interesting given where we're at right now. We take a look at the 2 crimes that were trending up. Well, okay, murder is one, and that is something that we're seeing nationally. That's just not a Lancaster problem. We're seeing that from coast to coast, crimes against persons are ticking up a little bit. Burglary is also, if you take a look at the green line there, that's our trend line. We are trending up, but that trend line is still below our baseline. And remember, the baseline is the average number of crimes per week for this particular category. The baseline for this is 23.79. And you can see the frequency over on the left. You can see our frequency range for 52 weeks runs from about 18 on the left up to about 21, 22 on the right. So we're still, even though this is not real positive, the thing that you can see with this, again, it goes back to some of the discussion I had with you last meeting. You can see as you look towards the right, and the further towards the right is where we are right now. Where we really drop off is we've lost a few of those weeks where things really went down. If you look more towards the center and towards the left, you can see those weeks where burglaries were way down, way below 10. We've lost that during this or during the last 10 to 15 weeks. But when you take a look at the peaks still aren't way up there. So that kind of accounts for why some of the numbers are the way they are. Now, here comes the interesting data that I was telling you about. Of course, rape is trending flat, but again, that's a low-frequency crime for us. Let's take a look at what's trending down. Again, this is 52 weeks of data, and for robbery, we average, or when we include the new data from the UCR for last year, our baseline dropped down to 5.95 robberies per week. And as you take a look at that, you can see we clearly have a downward trend there. And the other positive thing is the downward trend is tracking well below the baseline. So this is good news. If things keep going the way that they're going, we should start to see some declines in this. The same way with assault. If you take a look at assault, you can see with aggravated assault, we averaged 15.47 since 1997. If you take a look at that, we are averaging, we're well below the baseline. That blue line up there is the baseline. You can see the downward trend of the trend line there, and you can see a clear and distinct downward trend. We take a look at larceny. Larceny has a not quite as strong and pronounced of a downward trend, but it's still there. Grand theft auto, also a downward trend, and we're below the baseline. And just with regard to larceny, you can see we're also below the baseline there. For arson, we're above the baseline, but again, this is another one of those low-frequency crimes, and I think we had a firebug working over on the east side for a little while that was driving that up. But I believe that individual may be in custody now. These are this is the density map for the past 5 weeks. You can see 412 geocoded to the city limits there at the time the map was produced. This is our spatial trend analysis, and this shows us spatially within the city where we actually were making progress and where things were going up for us, whether we had a relative decrease or increase. This is our forecast for June of 2012. That was given to the sheriff's station at our normal meeting with them on the first Wednesday of the month. And this is our repeat call locations for the month of May. Not really a whole lot new on there. Denny's up on Avenue I, and Lancaster Estates, I think. And it looks like the Department of Corrections parole office had a problem with their alarm over there, and they popped up on it. And I think that's about it. Questions?
Any questions? Thank you for the outstanding report. It's good to see that the level of analysis that's going into these data as well. Certainly look forward in the future to hearing then how we're beginning to address some of these things as that becomes clear. You note for the people who are here, you might be watching this online too, that some of the maps are difficult to see. We had some technical issues today where you couldn't show some of those maps, but they are available online. You can go onto the City of Lancaster website.
Yes, this report is available online. If they go to the public safety webpage and they navigate to the Maps and Information page, there's a specific link on there for Criminal Justice Commission reports. They can click on it and get a copy of this report for themselves. I believe the news media knows about it. They seem to put it up all the time.
That's good. I think to always remind people that the more educated everyone is on the subject, I think the better citizens we become, more informed we are. But thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation. Arrest statistics, Los Angeles County Sheriff.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you. I'm going to go over some highlights. One thing I'm happy to report is that the incidents of reported graffiti have decreased again this month. We're down 43.5% from May 2011, which was 2,290 incidents. And this past May, we had 1,294. We recently did a top core parole operation assisted by ABCFI, where we did 36 locations, and out of that we made 29 arrests, including 7 parolees, 2 of which were parolees at large. On May 15th, we did a truancy sweep where we made 25 arrests, including 16 truancy citations, and a lot of our burglaries are daytime burglaries, and we're suspecting that the truant teenagers might be involved. LANCAP team's been redeployed to PM shift, and in doing so, we're hoping to hit the time frame that Jim came up for us with a lot of these crime trends. During this past month, they arrested 1 gang member for sales of meth, a parolee for burglary and metal theft out of the vacant Wendy's. He was in there stripping the burnout place of its plumbing. An adult for sales, got a little over an ounce, 39.55 grams of meth, and then 2 suspects for transportation, and on a rollback to the house doing a probation search, they found a stolen car. Burglary suppression team has been continuing their efforts at reducing the residential burglaries. One of the operations was a late night into early morning operation at Sunset Ridge Apartments, where we've noticed an increase in residential burglaries. They were assisted by Top and Core, and during that operation they watched as 2 suspects, an adult and a juvenile, began to prowl around and look into the apartment windows. They arrested the 2 who admitted to several burglaries, and they recovered, after going back and doing search warrants, recovered property from 5 locations. And then the last is, and I might add that Mr. Dorico pointed out that Sunset Ridge wasn't on Jim's frequent call list this month. And then the last event was a burglary back in February, which was quite alarming, as it involved a hot prowl, which is where the suspect breaks into a occupied residence and he sexually assaulted a female. DNA that was taken from his flip-flops identified him, and we tracked him in several days and had him in custody. So that's it.
Any questions? One of the issues that's been in the news lately has been the aerial surveillance program, which is going to be starting fairly soon. Can you give us a little update on where we are with that and when it's going to be starting? The aerial surveillance program?
Well, okay.
That's actually falls in our purview here, and right now we're still working out some kinks in the development stage issues, so I can defer this over to Jason Cottle. He can probably bring you up to speed better.
Yeah, Mark Bazzigian, which apologizes for not being here. He's been directly working on that, so he would have the more appropriate answers for you. We wouldn't be qualified to answer at this point.
Okay. I mean, I know it hasn't started yet. I know there's in the testing, according to reading the Antelope Valley Press. I know that.
Yeah, it's testing and it's imminent, yes.
Okay. It is a hot topic within the city, I know. So I'd like to suggest, if we could, then add that to our agenda as we move along to get an update, whether it's working, what sort of results we're getting out of that program, if we could.
Well, based on that, we'll schedule it for next commission meeting to get you an update.
That would be wonderful. Thank you. Any other comments?
I just have one question. What are we attributing the drop in the graffiti to?
Just really aggressive police work. They, working with the city, the graffiti tracker, we're able to school security, we're able to identify these kids and go after them, search warrants, probation searches, and they, they keep the stuff in their house, so it helps us to identify them with the crime, and they're proud of it, so they end up going to jail.
And there's great collaboration at the schools with the school security based on the sheriff's department's deputies on those sites and working with the security personnel, and they using FIR cards when they see graffiti on books or any kind of tagging or gang memorabilia or anything as well to note that and turn that in, and then they manage that at the station. So it gives them a good foundation and data to be able to go back to work these cases.
Great. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Thank you. Appreciate that. California Highway Patrol.
Good morning. In May, we investigated 3 fatal collisions. 2 we know were not DUI related. The third one, we're still waiting for the toxicology report to come in on. I have some year-to-date figures for you, and these are representative of January 1 through the end of May. DUI arrests are up 24% year-to-date compared to 2011, same time period. Our DUI collisions, that is where DUI is the primary collision factor, unfortunately those are up 6%. However, note our enforcement surpasses that by 400%. So we are still trying to be very aggressive with DUI enforcement. Total accidents year-to-date are down 6%. That's property damage, injury, fatals. Citation activity is up 16% year-to-date, and from May 2012 to 2011, they're up 6%. Our enforcement contacts are up 5% year-to-date, again to the end of May, and 1% from May 12 to May 11. We conducted a couple distracted driver surveys recently, which revealed an average compliance of 98%, looking for cell phone and texting violations. That's pretty much it.
When you talk about the DUI arrests being up 24%, is that, I know there's been a lot of emphasis on enforcement of DUIs. There's been a few special programs. Is the increased arrest due to those programs, or is it because you think we have more drunk drivers on the road, or a combination of the two?
It's a combination, right. The Arrive Alive program on the 14 corridor has been very successful in reducing DUI-related collisions, and DUI arrests have been up significantly there. And we've also increased DUI activity on the East End, which has been an issue, and also some of it's just in the right place at the right time. Like just within the last week, one of our officers was in a cozy pattern with closure with Caltrans and a DUI, drove through the cone pattern. So, and then sometimes we're lucky. On a side note, a recent town council meeting I attended, a woman asked me if, the CHP, she called possible DUI in on a 911 call, and she asked me, do we go after him? And I assured her that our officers candidly are like sharks in the water. When we get those calls, we get everybody we can, try and anticipate different routes the person may go or exits. We had one just within the last week also. It was a mobile 911 call-in, and the person was on Sierra Highway. One of our officers went down Soledad, near Soledad. One officer went down Soledad, the other went to Sierra Highway. The officer on Soledad found the person. The only reason we were fortunate, is he missed his turnoff to a street in Acton. He overshot it, and our officer actually caught him on the way back. So that happened to be lucky. But we're consistently trying to be very aggressive, very strategic as well with that. And also on a note on 911, one thing I did also let her know, if we do get a plate from a witness, we will, if it's local, we will send officers to that location and try to wait it out. But obviously if it's distant, then it can serve no purpose. But
I understand. Well, regardless of the reason, it's good to get more people off the road. That's keep us all safer. Any other comments, questions? Moving on then, District Attorney update. Stephen Franklin.
Just briefly, the complaints, felony complaints that were issued through May, or for the month of May, were 366. Year to date, we're at 1,553. And again, I have the disclaimer that this is for all of the Antelope Valley. It's not limited just to Lancaster. But we're on par essentially with San Fernando on felony cases and Van Nuys, which is obviously our two closest branches. For misdemeanors, we have, for the month of May, filed 668. Year-to-date, we have a total of 3,374. So the only offices with higher misdemeanors would be West Covina, which is at 4,500, and East LA at 3,700. And that's the rundown. Are there any questions?
As Sacramento incompetence metastasizes to the court system, how is that going to affect your department's ability to prosecute some of these cases? I know they're closing a lot of courtroom space.
My understanding, as far as Lancaster, or as far as the Antelope Valley, I should say, is the only court right now that we're anticipating losing is it's one civil court. But irrespective, even if they were to close a felony court, as long as I'm going to be at the helm there at Antelope Valley Courthouse, we'll still settle cases in the same fashion. We're not going to reduce sentences merely because we're going to have to get shipped out to another courthouse, whether it be Van Nuys, San Fernando, or downtown, to be tried. The bigger problem, and we've talked about it for several months now, obviously, is the realignment, where people aren't going. They get a state prison sentence, and they're not going to state prison. They're doing local custody and at the sheriff's, downtown, and they're doing about anywhere from 15 to 30% of their time. That's a bigger problem that I hope the legislature addresses. At least put some more crimes on there that would be exempt from the local custody and putting it on the into state prison category. But as far as us actually losing courtrooms here in the Antelope Valley, the only one slotted right now, I'm told, is one civil court. So it might jam up the civil side a little bit, but we should be okay.
Any other questions, comments? No. In the absence of Chairman Vieira, I'd like to combine points number 5 and 6, and in a moment I'm going to turn the floor over to Leader Rico. But I do have a speaker card for point number 6, public safety update, so I'd like to invite Mr. Talbot up.
I've brought this subject up before, but this is the essence of a letter I sent to the Antelope Valley Press readers, letters from readers. This reader finds it strange that the DA is prosecuting a local female for alleged verbal telephone threats to Mayor Paris and the city's public safety officer, Lee DeRico. Misspelled his name, though. The so-called PSO, DeRico, publicly threatened myself in a public city park last August the 2nd when he objected to my constitutional right of public protest during an event publicized as National Night Out that boasted public safety as its theme. I was carrying a protest sign that aimed at the city mayor. DeRico threatened to put me in jail and screamed at my back, "I'm going to take you down, Lyle." I resisted his. When I resisted, he ordered 2 Explorer Scouts to shadow me for the rest of my stay. The sheriff contingent said nothing derogatory to me, only the public safety officer. After I made a sheriff complaint, a local detective investigated the incident and dutifully filled out filed a report with the DA's office, who, not surprisingly, declined to criminally prosecute DeRico dirty deeds. When the detective called me with that bit of news, he also informed me that the DA said to tell Mr. Talbot he was welcome to file a civil suit. And after what I read in the local press about the favored double standard treatment of pampered city officials that are the ones who are threatened, I fully intend to seek redress in our court system. Thank you.
Okay, so what are we doing here? Mr. Talbot, we're trying to run the meeting here, please. Thank you. Okay, so at this point in time, I'd like to, as I was saying, combine points number 5 and 6 and turn the floor over to Mr. DeRico, if you would address the Business Watch Subcommittee update and the Public Safety update.
I'd be happy to, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
As far as Business Watch, I'm happy to inform the Commission that we had our first Business Watch meeting with our Downtown Boulevard Association. It was well attended, dealing with some issues that they've brought to light, so we formed that group, and we're actually now in the process of working with them to come up with a more inviting design for our Business Watch sign that would be appropriate for downtown and throughout the city. And then again, Amy Vasquez has been receiving daily applications for other businesses within the community, from our small business community especially, to join Business Watch groups. So that's very encouraging. She sent out an inquiry to those businesses, and we've received a lot of participation so far. So we're working through that. On the public safety side, the Sheriff's Department has spent significant time and effort in the El Dorado neighborhood, anticipating a direction that we were going on a neighborhood improvement program in that area. The Sheriff's Department, there's a significant change in that neighborhood. I think if you spent some time over there, you'd see that already, based on some of the issues that were concerned over there. They made a number of arrests and identified some problems there. We also went out with the sheriff teams and the city staff from public safety, as well as some other staff folks here from the city in the Unite program, and did door-to-door surveys through that area. We also conducted a town hall meeting where the captain spoke and answered questions for probably well over an hour at that meeting, and this was managed through the Neighborhood Vitalization Commission, and this was their program through the Unite program. I think it was received very well. We had city staff there that ran a program for kids during the meeting so the adults could participate in the meeting, and we got some good information out of the folks that live in that area. So we look forward to doing some now follow-up as it relates to community-based organizations who were represented at the meeting that provided services, as well as different government agencies who provide services, for example, like DPSS, DCFS, them as well. So it was well participated and a very good turnout. We're right now currently working through our allocation of resources for next year and renewal of our contract with specifically the Sheriff's Department and Animal Control. Right now, as those county agencies, we move forward, and we'll be doing that as well with the DA's office here shortly on our community prosecution program. But what we're doing is right now going to meet and develop those resources for next year and how the captain wants to allocate them in his station. I'm proud to say that we, even through this budget times and issues that we've dealt with here at the city as far as the downturn in the economy, we're not reducing any resources in our public safety contracts. So that's very good news. The other thing that we're working on developing right now, and I've been working with the district, is developing this truancy plan in light of the fact that we are losing one juvenile traffic court that usually manages the truancy citations as well as curfew. We're going to have to come up with a new direction on that and how we want to manage that. I've been working with Dr. Vieira's staff on how we would implement that at the schools and divert those cases through the station over to our community youth court with Mr. Cobalt's group and staff. And so we're formulating that plan on how we can make it less cumbersome for the deputies that work in the field, to manage these truancy issues, to have more of a drop-off type setting where we can administer an administrative site and divert those cases here. So that we're building that process now through what legalities and how that will impact both the sheriff's station and the school district. So that's a priority right now, just based on the fact that these cases will no longer be going to our juvenile traffic court that doesn't exist. So that's pretty much where we're at. You know, Neighborhood Watch is continuing to expand. We just had to order a new group of signs that were rather expensive, but well worth it. And then how we're going to post those throughout these new groups out there and continue to create that enthusiasm. That's pretty much it for the month of May.
Questions, comments?
Yeah, I got one quick one. Lee, what's happening with the? Do you have any updates on the sex offender initiative that we put through a couple of months ago?
Yes, actually. Dave McEwen is on that now. He had some other priority issues on the city, dealing with city business. Now we've given him all the structure that the committee provided and all the research that was done. He's going to put that in a format that's appropriate for presentation to the city council, and I expect that quickly. I'd like to see it on the agenda for not the next meeting, but the meeting after for the city council's approval.
Okay, great.
Any comments, questions? Speaking for myself personally, I'd like to congratulate you and your staff for all the hard work that you're doing and the risks that you take and engage in the community. Address public safety issues. I think that it's a thankless job. There are always you're going to have detractors because anytime you step into those areas, some people are going to like what you do and some people don't. But as myself, as a resident and as a member of the commission, I'd like to congratulate you for making the effort, and it's always good to hear about some of the exciting things that are done. It's based on community input, so job well done.
Thank you, sir.
So we move on to public business from the floor for non-agendized items.
This portion of the agenda allows an individual the opportunity to address the Criminal Justice Commission on any item not on the agenda. State law prohibits the Commission from taking action on items not on the agenda, and your matter will be referred to staff. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. David Paul.
Mr. Vice Chair and Commissioners, good morning. I lost a member of my family last Friday. I was able to hold him in my arms as Dr. Bozeman injected pain relief and was able to put my dog to sleep. He was my dog for 12 years, and I always felt safe when I was away, when he was home protecting my family. It got me thinking about Mark Twain, who said that if you pick up a starving dog and make him prosperous, he will not bite you. That is the primary difference between a dog and a man. One of the things I've tried to do all my life is figure out what exactly our problem is, why we can't do a better job collectively of making life better for everyone. And I know that 1 to 4% of the human population are psychopaths, but the rest of us just need fair and consistent rewards and consequences to grow into better human beings. And I'm excited I've made a little progress here today to get my Human Accountability Project on the agenda here, to come and present it in its totality, to explain what it is that it tries to accomplish. But, you know, there's no greater joy than to love and respect the law, except sometimes the law isn't worthy of that love and respect, and that's where we need to work. You're right, Jim, we're not going to arrest our way out of crime. We're going to show people that the law works for them. And we shoot ourselves in the foot so much. That's why this traffic enforcement initiative and human betterment program, the Human Accountability Project, aims towards that. So I'm excited about getting it up here and being able to talk about it. Nothing's going to spur community interest and participation like this. We have to be honest about what we do, our outcomes, and there's really no greater hit to respect for the law than when a child sits in the back seat of his car and watches his parent purposely try and evade the police. It sickens me that we have the technology to prevent a single drunk driver from ever getting behind the wheel. We have the ability to shut down high-speed chases with a switch, but we won't do it. The public doesn't understand the benefits that come from electronic traffic monitoring and obeying the law and considering everyone else, and that's the aim of the program. So I look forward to the next time if I can get up here and have about 10 minutes to just lay this out and let you see what you think. Thank you.
Thank you as well. A couple of comments. One, condolences on your lost dog. I've gone through that as well, just like a family member. And I also want to say that I do appreciate the tone and the spirit of your comments and observations when you address this commission. So thank you for that. Commissioner comments?
Couple. Want to thank Captain Johnson for being on the campus at Antelope Valley College. We, a couple years ago went contractual with the Sheriff's Department, and it is a much safer place. When you put 15,000 students day in and day out, nighttime, it draws a crowd that you may not want to visit, but since we have that presence, that crowd has disappeared. And I also want to thank him and Marvin, who is the president of our Sheriff's Boosters Club, and we just got, are getting a cart for our police officers to travel back and forth across campus, and again, another way of making it quicker and safer on our campus. And I want to thank Tim for helping that process and getting it painted and fixed up like it should. Hunter Dodge was instrumental in getting this cart. So, Marv, just want to say thanks from the college.
Any other comments? Okay. I think this is a record in terms of the time that we got through. Our next regular meeting is going to be on Wednesday, July 11th at 10 o'clock a.m. And with that, at about 10:51, I'm going to call it. We are adjourned.